Welcome back to Green is Good, and we've got today with us our friend Eric Harris. He's the Associate Counsel and Director of Government and International Affairs at ISRI. Welcome to Green is Good, Eric.
Thank you, John. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, really, it's an honor to have you on today. And before we get into all the great work that's going on at the Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries, I want to share a little bit about your story. I want you to share your journey leading up to 2005 when you joined ISRI and stuff like that. I know you're, highly educated and super, super bright. And like I'm telling the audience now, Eric's a longtime friend of mine since 2005, and ERI and we are proud members of the great organization ISRI. So, Eric, share a little bit what led up to this. Were you always thinking about this as, when you were in law school and other things you were doing, or is this something that just came along the way in your journey?
It's quite interesting, John. My story really begins back in Austin, Texas. Oddly enough, I was a radio, television, and film undergrad, an aspiring filmmaker of all things. And it wasn't. I also have a real desire for going out and running on trails and enjoying the outdoors, and noticing some of the smog and air pollution around the Austin area. I started to get more and more interested in environmental issues. And one thing led to the next, and I found myself up in law school at the University of Montana, which is a fantastic program, a lot of hands-on stuff, great environmental program, and did a lot of good work there, and found myself with an opportunity to come out to Washington, D.C., and have a chance to work for Senator Max Baucus, who's one of the great senators from the state and the country. And at the same time, I found myself at George Washington University studying international environmental law, which in some ways led me to ISRI, because as you know. Yeah. Most of the material that is processed and handled to some extent, it moves around in a transboundary way across nation states, and so you quickly find yourself into international issues and some of the environmental issues to go with it, and that's kind of how I ended up at ISRI.
So interesting. So you really got a huge breadth of experience, both very personal and also educationally speaking, and that makes a whole lot of sense. And you've been doing great work, and I've had the honor to work with you since approximately 2005. And for our listeners out there, way before it was cool to be green and way before it was cool to be sustainable, or the sustainability revolution actually landed in America, let's just say, the Institute of Scrap and Recycling Industries has been doing so much great work and have so many great members that are truly doing the real recycling in this country, just so people know. And it goes back to everything from scrap recycling to car recycling, and now it's evolved to one of the hotter topics, one of the faster growing waste streams in the world, electronics recycling. And I think today, Eric, you've spearheaded that leadership and that advocacy. And I think today we're going to chat, besides all the great work ISRI's doing, we're going to chat a little bit about the great work ISRI's doing and you're doing on the electronic recycling industry topics. Can you give us, as just a platform, the state of the nation, the state of the nation of the industry itself? How is it going right now with regards to U.S. electronic recycling and the evolution of that whole industry that you're a huge advocate and really helping manage that whole process?
Well, you're right, and it is quite interesting. This is a very unique time to be in this industry, certainly for someone like yourself and right. And the folks that got in early. This comes at no surprise, but this industry, the electronic side of the recycling industry, is really still the fastest growing segment. As you mentioned, ISRI members have been recycling ferrous, steel, and nonferrous metals, copper and aluminum, for decades, well over 100 years in this country, a very long, established, proud tradition. In fact, it really is an honor to represent you folks and all the members out there that have really understand how you take these recycled materials, add value to them, and bring them back into the economy, providing a tremendous benefit not only to the environment, but helping supplement those raw materials out there that helps us make all the stuff we need, whether it's plastic and everything else. And what we have seen on the electronic side is a market over the last 10 years that has seen growth, if not tremendous growth. There have been a number of reports. Well, as with any industry that's budding or growing, you're going to have some growing pains.
Right.
And you're going to see some consolidation, and you're seeing some technologies change, and there are going to be some winners and losers in the marketplace. And we've seen all that, and we're going to likely see more of it. But the bottom line is for electronics recycling, certainly in the United States and to some extent globally, we're seeing a market that is maturing and headed in the right direction. We are seeing jobs created in almost every state across the country in a dramatic way. We're processing higher volumes and getting greater return on the back end, those commodity grades, and returning good, fully functioning equipment back into the domestic and international market. And we're processing more material. We've seen growth in all those areas. Employment, value of the market has increased, and volume of material has actually increased. So we've really come a long way, and certainly have more things to do, but so far so good.
And you've also been one of the great leaders on the third-party certification movement. Share with our listeners the importance of third-party certification and what your leadership has done on that issue, Eric.
Well, I appreciate that, and certainly it's been a multi-stakeholder-driven issue, and just to dot the history, in 2005, during the President Bush's administration, the EPA gathered all of us together and said, look, we'd like to put together a set of operational standards that improves not only environmental conditions but protects worker health and safety at the facilities, not only in the United States, but anywhere where used electronic products are being processed. And from that humble beginning, we have developed a number of standards in the marketplace, but that particular standard, the R2 standard, came online in 2009. We had our first facility certified, which is an independent third-party audited certification, which basically says, look, you have to demonstrate that what you say you're doing, you're actually doing. So bring an auditor out and demonstrate that. Then you can hold yourself out in the marketplace accordingly. But since 2009, I believe the R2 standard in and of itself has over 510 facilities now, and a number of countries, not just in the United States, but growing outside of the United States. So a tremendous accomplishment, not only for EPA and their public-private partnerships, but also everyone in the market who has embraced the need. And this is certification has now really become a cost of doing business in this market space, and you really need to get certified if you're going to be a serious player.
You know, for our listeners who just joined us, we're so excited and honored to have my friend on today. His name's Eric Harris. He's the Director of Government and International Affairs at ISRI. To learn more about the great organization ISRI or to join ISRI, please go to www.isri.org, isri.org. And to become certified or learn more about becoming certified, please go to www.certifymerecycling.org. CertifyMeRecycling.org. Eric, you talked a little bit about your educational history, international environmental law, masters. Why is the international markets so important to electronic waste recycling, the industry itself, the certification process, as you just mentioned, and the evolution of where we are going, as you say, the travel of and the intercontinental commerce of the commodities. Share a little bit about your visibility and your thoughts on the international markets and how they matter.
Yeah, this very well could be the most interesting, at least to some of us, aspect of this whole market. And that, you know, the bottom line, the premise is people out there in the world, not just in the developed countries, they want better lives. They want the gadgets and the stuffs that improve our lives, whether it be cell phones or laptops or televisions or just that electronic, bridging that digital divide. Folks in these countries want those same luxuries and those same benefits. And so what we're seeing around the world, almost without exception, is that these electronic products are reaching their end of life in these markets. And so solely relying on good companies in the United States and Europe and Canada and so forth is really not going to be good enough to really address the growing demand for responsible recycling outside of these developed countries. And so couple that with the notion that this particular market is really about moving material. And John, you know this better than anyone. You have to go out and collect the material. You have to bring it into your facility. You need to process it, handle it responsibly. But then on the back end where you make your money back is you need to sell those products and those commodities not only in domestic markets but throughout the world where that demand is. And so inherently there is a transboundary aspect to this business and how this material flows not only state to state, but also internationally from one country to the next becomes very important. And so we have a lot of interested folks making sure that, look, this material is handled responsibly. And let's be quite honest, as some of these countries develop, there is an informal sector out there that is not always doing it the way we want them to do it. And so there is a tremendous opportunity for companies like yours and companies or associations like ISRI to share our industry know-how, to say, look, we know the growing pains you're going through, and these are the operational issues that you really can navigate around and improve your environmental conditions and protect, again, your workers' health and safety. So the idea of moving certifications around the world and ensuring that every facility that wants to get in this market adheres to those same quality assurances is really a big opportunity.
Eric, let's talk about the Basel Convention. For our listeners out there that don't fully understand it, can you articulate what that really means? And should U.S. companies really care about the Basel Convention with regards to electronic waste recycling?
Right. Well, the Basel Convention is an international environmental agreement, a treaty, among nation states that really governs the transboundary movement of hazardous waste and other waste and their disposal. So these are the laws that nation states adhere to when they want to move hazardous materials outside of their country. Historically, the convention was really established to really address really hazardous bad stuff, toxic solvents and sludges, moving into places that really shouldn't have been moved. And so the convention was really put in place to deter some of those movements, very similar to or mirrored after U.S. law, the Resource Conservation Recovery Act, or RCRA. And so now what we find is, well, the convention is growing and maturing and is moving into other streams, and it has really gravitated towards how to handle or manage some of the used electronic products that may ripen into a hazardous waste. And as such, how we move that material now runs right up against this international treaty. And so, indeed, if you're a company that's moving material, either in the United States or in China or South America, you're going to need to understand what those laws are. But perhaps most importantly, John, is it's not a one-size-fits-all. You have to know what you're shipping, for what purpose, and to what country. And so there are differentiations between that material flow. There's a difference between sending a functional product back into the marketplace as a reusable good than sending a shipment of steel or copper material reintroduced.
Great point. So there's a lot that goes into the thought process of now moving things around the world with regards to electronics, used electronics, and also the commodity byproducts of those electronics.
Well, that's right. And, one of the more interesting debates going on right now at the Basel Convention, to what extent the convention should apply to warranted goods or
Great point.
Materials that are under product recalls or moving for diagnostic testing. So if you have a cell phone or a laptop that's under warranty and it breaks, and you're sending it back to the manufacturer, Should that be governed as a hazardous waste? Many say it should. Many other countries say, wait a minute, that's kind of beyond the scope of the convention. Right. And now, if you look beyond consumer electronics and IT products, you look at anything with a circuit board in it is really the scope of what we're talking about. So you're looking at medical equipment, aeronautics, automobiles, think of all the cars and electronics. So really, this debate will really set the platform for how we move these types of materials as we move forward. Very, very important stuff.
We've got about 4 minutes left, and I want you to share with our listeners a little bit of your opinion and your thoughts on. There's been a large amount of recent reports, Eric. International Data Corporation, U.S. International Trade Commission, the UN MIT study, and also even last week there was a Senate hearing. Can you make some sense and sensibility of the statistics that are coming out and how our listeners should be handling if they're a government entity, a corporate entity, or just even a person on the street that's worried about doing the right thing with their old electronics and also protecting their data? What do the recent studies show, and what should people and organizations and governmental entities be thinking about now and in the future with regards to the appropriate disposal of electronic waste? Yeah.
Well, I think the reports that you mentioned are really showing the arc of change is heading in the right direction. And the most important of those three reports is the U.S. International Trade Commission report. And this is a report that was commissioned by the USTR, the U.S. Trade Ambassador Ron Kirk, to take a look at what was actually happening to use electronics in the United States. Did we have a mass exodus of material moving into places we didn't want, or is there a different story? And what this report says really irrefutably is that no, actually the market has changed. And to the credit of companies like yourselves and others, we've really come a long way, and the vast majority, over 90% of the material is actually being collected and processed right here domestically in the United States.
And creating thousands of jobs in the process.
Over 45,000 jobs across the country and then some. It's coming even more. But so what does that mean for the average consumer who wants to do the right thing?
Right.
Well, you need to make sure that your electronics end up at a company, end up at a facility that can handle it responsibly. And there's no better way to have that at least initial assurance than working with a certified electronics recycler, a company that has gone through one of these certifications, like the R2 Rios program, and said, look, we want to hold ourselves out operationally that we're one of the good guys, and we've been audited to it, and that's an assurance to the market that folks can feel comfortable about sending their material to.
Got it. And we're down to the last minute and a half. ISRI, tell me, give a shameless plug for ISRI and all the great work you're doing, and what role does ISRI have in this marketplace?
Well, ISRI is the trade association for the scrap recycling industry, not just electronics, but for ferrous, nonferrous, plastics, glass, tire, and rubbers. We hold ourselves out and are proud to say we are the voice of the recycling industry, and our top priority is really to promote and protect this market and to help you all, the companies, the members that we represent. It is a member-led organization to really get out of the way and make sure that you all have the tools in the marketplace to do what you do best, and that is take this material in, process it, and return it to the market and try to help not only domestic but the global economy.
Oh, that well said and well put. And Eric, thank you so much for your time today. And ISRI is the voice of the recycling industry and has been long before the sustainability revolution landed on the shores of America. ISRI has been one of the legacy voices of the whole industry. And we're proud members, and we're so proud to have you on our show today. For our listeners out there that want to join ISRI or learn more about it, please go to www.isri.org, isri.org. And if you want to get certified or learn more about the certifying process, go to www.certifymerecycling.org. Eric Harris, you are a recycling and sustainability superstar and truly living proof that green is good.